How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Truman Bradley, but at this moment you cannot see me. Why? Very simple. The camera is not pointed in my direction. There we are. And that's almost the theme of the story we are about to bring you. A tremendously exciting story. I'll tell you now that this story is fiction. It did not happen. But the big question is, could it have happened? Although our story may be hard to believe, there are everyday things all around us that are equally hard to believe. Here is a gun and a bullet. I'm going to shoot that television tube. You know I fired that bullet. You saw the impact when it struck the target. But did you actually see the flight of the bullet? Of course not. But because our senses do not perceive certain things, does not mean they do not exist. Now let me show you a film of a similar experiment photographed by a high-speed camera developed by Eastman Kodak Company. This camera did see the bullet in flight. It actually photographed the unseen with a speed 3,000 times faster than the human eye. Did you ever hear of inaudible sound? I mean frequencies beyond the capacity of the human ear. Above a certain point, 20,000 cycles to be precise, the human ear cannot pick up any noise. But the sound is here in this room, strong enough to produce sufficient heat to melt the paint off the wall. Hard to believe until you see it. And now let me show you something else. This is a ball bearing from a giant turbine. If I let go, you know it will fall. Or will it? This is a balanced magnetic field in which even a heavy object will float. Our world is a heavy object floating in much the same manner. We brought you these authentic experiments so that you might more fully enjoy the incredible story we are about to bring you. A story which did not happen. But could it have happened? Maybe in just a moment you'll know the answer to that question. Our story begins somewhere in the California desert, a flight test center where new methods are developed, new devices are evaluated, and new planes are tested. This plane is the FA-962, code name XF. The X stands for experimental, the F for fighter. The mission, to test for the first time a revolutionary and secret fuel which, if successful, will enable that pilot and that plane to fly faster than even the most advanced engineering thought has ever dreamed possible. This is the nerve center of Operation Prime 4. Every phase of the flight will be observed, monitored, computed in this control room. Dr. James Everett is in charge of research. General Troy represents the Defense Department. And here is the key man of the entire operation, the test pilot of the XF. Name, Fred Gunderman, Major, United States Air Force. The engineers have tested and adjusted their instruments. There is no unusual tenseness or excitement here. To all of these people, it began as just another test flight.
She's airborne, Dr. Everett.
Take over, please.
XF to control. I'm taking her up to altitude. She responds well. Controls are firm. Angle of climb, 45 degrees.
Fuel consumption.
10 gallons a minute. Increasing angle of climb to 60 degrees. Still firm, 30,000 feet. Airspeed, 520.
Roger, Fred, over.
Beginning pushover. Altitude, 40,000. Slight flutter. controls are firm. Switching to prime 4.
After 5 years of work, I've still got my fingers crossed. Now we'll find out what our special propellant can really do.
Controls firm at 640. Beginning initial run. Accelerates like a rocket. I'm at Mach 1. Mach 1.6.
That's over 1,000 miles an hour.
Mach 1.8.
How do you feel?
Felt a little dizzy for a minute. Head's clear now. Unless there's something wrong with the Mach meter, I'm at Mach 2.01.
What?
Let me have a reading. Fred, your instrument is correct. You're going over 1,500 miles per hour.
He's going at twice the speed of sound.
Mach 2.2. Barrel rolling her left.
Acrobatic at that speed must feel pretty good to him.
Giving her full throttle.
You mean she isn't open yet? That's enough, Fred. You're liable to run into too much heat.
The outer air temperature is... What in the name of...
What is it, Fred? Fred, what is it?
Are you reading my speed?
1,650 miles per hour.
Do you know anything that flies faster?
The speed of light. You're piloting the fastest aircraft.
You're dead wrong. It's an aircraft to starboard in parallel flight. It's pacing me.
What?
What's he talking about?
Where is it?
200 yards to starboard.
Did you hear that?
We're tracking him. There's nothing else but his plane on the scope.
Radar reads no aircraft in your vicinity. There's absolutely nothing up there that can match your speed.
It's not an aircraft. At least it's not like any aircraft I've ever seen. It looks more like a guided missile. It's closing in.
We read no missiles.
You may not read it, but it's out there just the same.
We read no object whatsoever.
It's pacing me and it's closing in on me. It's shaped like a torpedo. Has a metallic gray color.
Call off the flight.
Fred, listen and listen carefully. Bring that ship down. The test is over. Bring that ship down.
Whatever that thing is, it's getting close and I can't slow down. Give me a report, fast. You must have lost me.
It must be a reflection or an optical illusion.
Fred, we haven't lost you. We've got you on radar and we're tracking you. If you see anything, it's an optical illusion. There is absolutely nothing off your starboard wing. Decrease speed and come down.
I tell you, this thing is going to collide. It's a meteor or something. I don't know what it is. It's following every maneuver I make. I can't shake it.
Decrease speed and come down.
Taking evasive action. I'm going to dive.
He'll tear the wings off at that speed.
Fred, don't do it. Don't do it, Fred. There's nothing up there.
He's in a dive.
Decrease speed. Can you hear me, Fred?
Altitude 25,000.
Can you read me, Fred?
He must have blacked out.
Altitude 20,000.
I can read you, Jim. It's no good. I can't shake it. We're on a collision course. This seat ejector had better work because I'm leaving.
Pinpoint the area where he's coming down.
In Sector 6.
Dispatch an ambulance immediately.
Red Gunderman parachuted to safety. He was found suffering only minor shock and was taken to the base hospital for observation. Colonel R.J. Barton, top specialist in aviation medicine, was called in by General Troy.
How do you feel, Fred?
All right. Pretty good, sir. Fred, it's very important we get certain facts from you while they're still fresh in your mind.
Go right ahead.
After you pushed your ship over the sound barrier, Major, did you experience a slight sensation of double vision?
Double vision? No, my vision was normal at all times.
Have any nausea at any time?
Well, there was no nausea. I felt perfectly normal.
Any other physical symptoms? Anything that might be connected with involuntary panic?
Gentlemen, let's get one thing straight. I saw another aircraft flying right off my wing. When it set a collision course, I bailed out. Now, those are the facts. Why can't you accept them as such?
For a number of reasons, Fred. First, because there's nothing else that flies that fast.
Nothing else, sir? Aren't you overlooking something that can't be mentioned? A word that everybody is afraid of? I'm not afraid to say it. A flying saucer?
Fred, at extreme altitudes and extreme speeds, sometimes the mind plays tricks.
Yes, I know that. But if this wasn't a flying saucer that I saw, it came right out of the same stable.
Then you describe it, Major.
Vividly. It was long, probably twice the length of my ship, cylindrical in shape, metallic in color.
Are you certain it was a solid object?
Absolutely, sir.
You say a solid object paced your ship. Yet we had 3 separate radars with a clear lock on you from the moment you left the ground.
On that particular battery of sets, we could have tracked almost anything.
That's right. Anything that we know about.
Let me ask you a question, Fred. Why are you so violently opposed to the possibility of optical illusion?
Because I'm a trained observer. I've been handling planes under all conditions for 15 years. St. Elmo's fire, optical illusion, inversion phenomena. You name it, I've seen it. I also know the difference between a refraction and a flying object. At the time of that sighting, I was properly oriented. My pressure suit functioned perfectly. I felt no discomfort. Now let me ask you a question, with your permission, sir. Are we going to all this trouble to prove that I'm sick or suffering from hallucinations or crazy? Or are we trying to actually find out what it was that I saw?
Look at it from our point of view for a moment, Fred. A very valuable plane engaged in a highly important experiment was lost. We don't know why. There was no collision. You did bail out. If there was such an object in the sky that threatened you with a collision, we must find out what it was. If there is no such object, then we must find out why you thought you saw one.
I saw it because it was there. If you think I'm off my rocker, that's your privilege, sir. But it's my duty to report the truth. You can examine me and cross-examine me, but my answers will always be the same.
Have a good rest, Fred.
This is Major Gunderman. Get me my wife at Desert Hill 437.
Certainly, Major. I'll call you right back.
Helen?
No, Major. This is security section, Captain Ferguson.
But I was calling my wife.
I'm sorry, Major. No outside calls are permitted.
A board of inquiry was convened to investigate the strange happenings of the test flight of the XF. A $750,000 plane with important data had been destroyed. What had happened? Men were subjected to the same conditions of flight that Major Gunderman encountered. Mach 2, twice the speed of sound, and their reactions analyzed. No possibility was left unexplored. In Washington, 2,500 flying saucer reports were tabulated in the light of Gunderman's experience. The desert was combed by search planes, seeking out the wreckage of the XF. Major Gunderman gladly submitted to lie detector tests, but his answers were consistently honest. The stylus registered a steady indication of truth. After almost a week of intensive investigation, the Board of Inquiry had made practically no progress. Major Gunderman was retained at the hospital. His story never changed. He was finally permitted to see his wife.
Maybe you'd better calm down, dear. I've never seen you this way.
When I'm away from you and the kids, I worry. They'd only take my word that I saw something. I can't understand why they're so anxious to prove that I'm wrong.
What do you think you saw, Fred?
I'm sure that I tangled with a flying saucer. It's even hard for you to believe, isn't it?
Not if you say so.
It's not enough that I know it and that you believe me. I've got to prove it, Helen. If I don't, I'm going to start doubting myself, and the fears that I've cracked up will become a reality.
Darling, is there anything we can do?
I don't know. But we're sure going to try. Do you remember Professor Carson at Caltech?
Of course. And I know he was very fond of you. I remember you used to say he was the wisest man you ever knew.
I still think so. He's doing research at the observatory. I want you to go there and ask him...
Ask him what?
Ask him to tell you everything he knows about flying saucers.
Cautioned by her husband not to violate any security regulations and warned not to mention his experience, Helen Gunderman went to the one man she felt might strengthen her husband's strange story. Professor Samuel Carson,
authority on space.
He wants you to tell me everything you know about flying saucers.
Well, that's a pretty big order.
Oh, please, Professor, tell me anything you can. It's very important. What are flying saucers?
Well, astronomers know that all kinds of things are seen in the sky, and there are a great many so-called sightings of moving objects reported.
Do you believe there could be such a thing as flying saucers? I mean, objects built and powered by inhabitants from another planet.
Mrs. Gunderman, you're an intelligent woman. Look at this picture. Tell me what you see.
Looks like the solar system.
Yes, the sun is in the center. And how many planets can you count?
9.
9 major planets. And some of the planets have moons. And there are 50,000 asteroids and minor planets between Jupiter and Mars. Now look at this picture. It's a segment of space that's seen through a 200-inch telescope. The scientists know comparatively little about most of those stars, and no intelligent scientist would dare deny that life could exist on some of them. If this is the case, it might well be that such a civilization has developed a flying craft of a type unknown to us, and powered by a source as yet undiscovered by our scientists. Perhaps even those lines of magnetic force which bind us together.
Then you do admit it's possible that flying saucers could be in our skies.
I'd rather say it's not impossible.
I say it's more than possible. I say it's probable.
Then we have your permission to go on with these tests, sir.
Absolutely. Have your figures been verified by the computer?
We teletyped the figures to the Institute of Advanced Thinking at Princeton. We should have the answer within an hour. Now, this is the azimuth. Here is where Gunderman encountered his object.
Colonel Barton? Just a moment, please. Radio phone, General, from Mobile Station Abel Baker.
General Troy speaking. Affirmative. What's that? Speak louder, please. Affirmative. I'll meet you at the lab in 15 minutes. They've found a few scattered pieces which they think are parts of the XF. The helicopter's bringing them in.
So we postpone this test, sir?
No, I think you're on solid ground. You two go right ahead as soon as Major Gunderman arrives. I'll be back as soon as I can.
Now, with any luck, and the cameras in that plane aren't completely demolished, we'll have even more conclusive proof.
Dr. Barton, Major and Mrs. Gunderman are here.
Mrs. Gunderman.
Send him in. Hello, Mrs. Gunderman.
Oh, Colonel?
Gentlemen, I brought my wife along because I had her carry on a little private investigation.
Oh.
Well, she didn't violate any security restrictions. Her questions were based on generalities, never even mentioning my specific sighting.
Fine. Won't you sit down, Mrs. Gunderman?
Thank you. I had a long talk with Professor Carson, and he refuses to deny the possibility of the existence of flying saucers. Why don't you get his opinion?
So you still insist that what you saw was a spaceship?
Is there any other explanation?
What type of power would propel such a craft?
Magnetic. A ship could travel along the lines of magnetic force.
But if such a ship came close to a plane, wouldn't it magnetize its instruments?
Well, I don't know. I never thought about it like that.
Were your instruments magnetized?
At that point, things were happening so fast that I don't know.
Fred, we have examined every possible solution. We have the greatest respect for Professor Carson and his theory of magnetic force. However, we feel that the answer to this lies in a different realm.
Are you familiar with the principles of weightlessness, Fred?
Well, I suppose so, generally speaking.
Fred, now this chart is a reproduction of your flight pattern. Your speed, your altitude, and your course. This intersection indicates at what point you would hit an area of weightlessness.
I think I follow you, but what does it prove?
We've computed these figures very carefully, Fred. This point of intersection is the exact point where you first reported a long gray metallic cylinder that was matching the flight of your airship. Now remember that while I show you something else. Now, these pictures were taken at White Sands several years ago. Do you recognize the type rocket?
It looks like an Araby.
What do you estimate its speed at?
About 3,000.
No, not nearly that. It was traveling about 2 Machs.
Speed of the XF.
Now, watch this. What are those animals in the rocket capsule?
White mice?
Why are they floating like that?
Well, they seem to be weightless.
Why?
I suppose the thrust of the rocket nullified gravity.
That's exactly our theory. Keep watching.
That's it. That's it. That's exactly what I saw.
You're sure?
Dead sure. Now do you believe me? That I did see it, that I didn't imagine it? That film must have come from the camera on the XF. When did they recover it?
They didn't. Would you come here a moment, Major, please? There is your flying object.
A fountain pen?
That's exactly what you saw, Fred.
I'm afraid I don't understand.
Didn't you have a fountain pen with you in the cockpit?
Yes, it was chained to a notebook attached to the instrument board, but I can't believe why. It doesn't seem possible.
Remember, Fred, your senses wouldn't function properly under those conditions. Now, you assumed the fountain pen was a large object outside the plane instead of a small object inside the plane.
Your own fountain pen, weightless and floating right in front of you.
But it just doesn't seem possible.
It's not only possible, it actually happened.
And you almost killed yourself.
And I destroyed a $700,000 ship.
But you did save your life. And the knowledge we received, we never would have had. Perhaps the information is worth the price. File closed.
And now I think we've kept you two here quite long enough. I'm sure your kids are waiting for you.
They'll be happy to see their dad. Thanks for everything. You've been very patient with us. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Sorry, I guess the next time I won't be quite so positive.
Fred, be seeing you. Well, you combine a good medical man and a fair to middling scientist, you can lick almost any problem.
Oh, I don't know about any problem. But one thing's for sure. We proved Fred Gunderman did not see a spaceship.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry to disagree with you, but the only thing you've proven is that Fred Gunderman did not see a fountain pen. Here's a report from Princeton.
According to the calculations of AMEVAC, the plane XF at no time entered the area of weightlessness.
But Gunderman identified his pen, sir.
But a magnetized pen would not float around in a highly magnetized airplane. It would attach itself immediately to the iron-bearing portions of the cockpit.
Magnetized? But who said it was magnetized?
Gentlemen, here's a piece of metal from the cockpit of the XF.
Magnetized by an airship flying on magnetic power.
Does Washington know, sir?
Mm-hmm.
But what could you say to him?
That Fred Gunderman may have seen an aircraft of a type never before seen by any human on this planet. That we don't know what it was made of, that we don't know where it came from.
Washington issue any orders?
Mm-hmm. That with all the facilities at our command, we watch everything that moves in the sky.
Remember this? Did you see the bullet? I didn't either. But we know it flew across the room. And what about flying saucers? We brought you this picture. Purely fiction today. But how about tomorrow? A famous scientist once said, anything a man can think of can happen. Anything? I'll be with you again in just a moment. We sincerely hope that our program has brought you an exciting bit of entertainment. We hope also that you'll be with us again next week when we'll bring you another story of a little different nature, just as exciting and equally unusual. And now this is your host, Truman Bradley, saying, see you 1 week from today.